You know, it's maybe the biggest, most profound question we ever ask ourselves. What happens when our time is up? For thousands of years, we've looked everywhere for answers. In religion, in philosophy, in science, and today, we're diving right into that mystery.
So what does happen after we die? We're going to dig into one of the most compelling modern debates on this very topic. It's a fascinating back and forth between some prominent religious thinkers and leading atheists. We'll break down their arguments, the evidence they use, and maybe most importantly, what it all means for how we live our lives right here and right now. When you really boil it all down, the whole debate comes down to these two totally opposing views. On one side, you have the spiritual perspective. This is the idea that our essence, our soul, our consciousness, is something more than just biology and that it continues in some way. And on the other side, you've got the skeptical view. This one is grounded in neuroscience, and it basically holds that when the brain stops, so do we. End of story.
All right, so let's start with the case for an afterlife. At the very heart of it is this one single, really powerful idea that human beings are fundamentally more than just the sum of their physical parts, more than just stuff.
This question, which comes from Rabbi David Wolpe, pretty much frames the entire spiritual point of view. It's asking us to really think about it. Can our experiences of love, of consciousness, of just being you, truly be explained by just physical processes? Or do they point to something deeper, something non-physical, maybe even something eternal about us?
What I find so interesting here is how Rabbi Wolpe tackles a common criticism head-on. He argues that just because we can't imagine a coherent afterlife doesn't mean it doesn't exist. He uses this amazing analogy. Think of a baby in the womb trying to picture our world. It's literally unimaginable. So when we try to picture another world and come up with silly images of harps and clouds, he says that's a failure of our imagination, not a failure of the idea itself.
And while this really gets to the emotional core of the spiritual argument, this quote comes from Rabbi Wolpe's own experience burying his father, and it captures this powerful intuition that so many people have, that the physical body is just a vessel. It's that gut feeling that a person's essence still is, even when their body is no longer there.
And this brings the whole argument right back to the here and now. For thinkers like Rabbi Brad Artson, the point isn't just about what happens in the future. The belief in something more is supposed to have a huge impact on how we live now. It inspires us to treat each other with a sense of eternal significance, and to live our own lives with dignity and purpose.
But there is a completely different perspective. For skeptics, the whole idea of an afterlife isn't just some unfounded belief. They argue it's a potentially harmful one.
The philosopher and neuroscientist Sam Harris presents this absolutely staggering number: 9 million. That's how many children die before the age of 5, every single year. For Harris, a reality like this makes the idea of some benevolent, divine plan that'll all make sense in the afterlife incredibly difficult, if not impossible to accept.
And this leads to a really powerful moral argument against believing in an afterlife. Harris contends that waiting around for cosmic justice is basically a form of escapism. It lets us tolerate horrific unfairness in this world because we have this comforting thought that it'll all get sorted out later. But he argues our real ethical responsibility is to create justice right here, right now, because this might be the only chance we get.
And beyond the moral argument, there's the evidence from neuroscience. The case is pretty straightforward. Everything we think of as us, our memories, our personality, our consciousness, is directly tied to the physical brain. When the brain gets damaged, the self gets damaged. I mean, if a soul existed independently, why would a stroke be able to erase a person's entire identity? From this perspective, when the brain dies, the show is over.
The late Christopher Hitchens, he had such a talent for these powerful analogies. And this is how he described the finality of death. It's not just that the party is over for you. It's that the party keeps going on without you. It's just a raw, visceral image of our own mortality. But then, look how he flips it around. He reframes the promise of eternal paradise not as a comfort, but as a kind of celestial dictatorship. Imagine a party you can never, ever leave, run by a boss who demands that you enjoy it. For Hitchens, this isn't a promise of freedom at all, it's the ultimate form of totalitarian control.
So, we're left with two starkly different ways of looking at the world, and this conflict really pushes us to ask a deeper question. Where did these beliefs even come from in the first place, and how have they changed over time?
You know, what's crucial to understand is that our modern concepts of heaven and hell, well, they weren't just handed down fully formed.
Early Judaism, for example, pictured Sheol, which was this shadowy underworld for everyone. The distinct ideas of a rewarding heaven and a punishing hell, a lot of that was heavily influenced by later traditions like Persian Zoroastrianism. For critics, this evolution suggests these are human concepts, not divine ones. But here's the counterpoint. Rabbi Artson argues that critics are often attacking this simplistic, literalist version of faith that, frankly, sophisticated believers don't even hold. He points to thinkers like Maimonides, who actually wrote that his work had hidden, metaphorical meanings for people who could look past the literal text. The argument here is that religion has always been more flexible and nuanced than its critics give it credit for.
That idea of nuance, though, it runs into the hard reality of history. I mean, regardless of what elite theologians might have believed, literal doctrines have had enormous real-world consequences. The promise of eternal punishment just for disbelief has been a tool of control for centuries. And the sale of indulgences, literally paying cash to shorten your time in purgatory, that funded the construction of St. Peter's Basilica. This was a whole system built on a very, very literal belief in the afterlife.
And just to show you how wide the field of possibility really is, there are ideas out there that are stranger than anything from traditional religion. The simulation argument, for example. It's a philosophical theory that suggests our whole universe is just a computer program. And in that scenario, life after death could just mean the programmers decide to rerun the simulation. It sounds like science fiction, but it's a serious philosophical argument that just underscores how little we truly know for sure.
Okay, so after exploring ancient faith, modern neuroscience, and even simulated realities, where does that leave us? Ultimately, this entire debate comes right back down to earth, to our lives, right here, right now.
And here we can see the two final paths that emerge from this whole debate. On one hand, the spiritual takeaway is that a hope for what's beyond orients us to value each other as having this abiding significance. On the other, the skeptical takeaway is that accepting this as our only life creates an urgent responsibility to build justice and meaning now. And here's the fascinating part. Even though they start from opposite ends of the universe, both paths end up converging on the profound importance of our actions in this life.
And this is such a powerful reminder that neither worldview holds a monopoly on morality. Rabbi Wolpe himself points this out. He acknowledges that, yeah, religion can be twisted to terrible ends, but purely secular ideologies have also led to absolutely horrendous outcomes, all in the name of perfecting humanity here on Earth. And so that leaves us here with this one final powerful question. It takes the core of the skeptical argument and turns it into a personal challenge for every one of us. Whether you believe in an afterlife or not, this whole debate forces us to confront our own mortality and decide what kind of meaning we're going to create in the time we have. So, what does it demand of you?